Git, as you guys may know, is a version control software. What it's doing is it's allowing you to keep many different versions of whatever you're working on, and you can very easily switch between those versions, combine versions, etc., etc. Now, sometimes the design of this Git program makes it hard to do what it's supposed to do, and on top of that, it trips up beginners like me. So here's a video on another UI issue that I think makes it confusing to use Git to its full potential. I am going to assume you know how to initiate a Git repo on your computer. If you don't, maybe I can do that in the future. Now we're going to go into this Git repo. So this means change directory. I'm going to change my directory and go right in here. So this is my Git repo. Now, how do you check if Git is already initialized in your folder, aka your repo? You go Git status. So this is showing Git is working. And in fact, there is some file called Jerry's Band that is not committed. Yeah, interesting. Before we do that, let's look at how many branches we have on this. We got a few things going on. We have an uncommitted file, and we have a bunch of branches. These are all things we can use Git to compare. So let's do it. The red here is used very well. There's a file that's not committed, so we should commit it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my VS Code. A lot of you might have other things code-wise, but I've been using VS Code. So let's say my band. Who's going to be in my band? How about my neighbors? Isaac, Sam, Ashish. So these are my neighbors. Okay, so now we're saved, and we have to commit it. So first thing we do is git add. Then we're going to commit it. And then we're going to have a little message. Add 3 names to file. So that's our commit message. Boom. To see that everything is good, all you have to do is git status. You see that there's nothing to commit. You see, nothing to commit. So we added a new file to this 1970s branch. What if we forget what we did, or we come back a few days later, we want to double check, and that's where Git Diff can be used. We want to check the differences between the branches. Git Diff, and then the thing you want to compare versus the other thing you want to compare. So you can either do it like this, have the ... or you can just have space. So let's do ... And so this is what it's trying to show, the minus and the plus. Basically, minus just means one file, plus is another file. So it's saying that our 1970s branch has a file, Jerry's Band, whereas our 1980s branch doesn't have that file. That's why it's null, because we only committed and added that new band to the 1970s branch. Also, it tells you here what the changes were in that new file that only exists in 1970s. Do you see an issue I'm already seeing right now? If you don't, I'll give you another example. Let's go back to the branches. Let's see what branches we're on right now. Okay, we're on the 1980s. Let's go back to the 1970s. So we're going to switch to the 1970s. What if we take that same file from before? All right, so we got this file now. What if we add a few members? We add Jaime, right? We add Tori, we add Sam. So we're adding a few more members here. We have to commit this, right? Because if you do git status, we modified it, so we got to do git add Jerry's band.txt. Then we got to do git commit Jerry's band.txt. Type in a message. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3. Add 3 more members to band. We're going to do git log. 1 line. I believe you have to use 2 hashes. Yeah, here. Let's say someone else was checking what I'm doing, or let's say I come back a few days later and I forgot what I did. Let's compare the changes. So the way we do it is we do git diff, and then we compare this hash and this hash. So we're going to compare the 2 commits and see the differences. So these are the 2 differences. It's telling me this is the first file, so that first commit, the most recent one, compared to the same file, but from a commit prior to that. So the most recent edit we did, notice how it shows the differences in red. And then for the other file, it shows something in green. Doesn't this confuse you at all? Doesn't this look like the file has something wrong, especially those marked in red? Why is it red? We're just comparing versions, whether branches or commits or whatever. Why is one thing that we're comparing red? That's implying that it's wrong, right? That's what we associate red with. In fact, when I was showing Git Diff to some of my other friends who hadn't used Diff, the first thing the red made them think is, oh, is this the errors? Are these the things that need to be corrected? Right? That's what you think of when you think of red. Let's see what happens when there are a lot of differences in our comparisons. So we're going to switch to a different branch and make some more edits. Let's look at where everything is in current. So currently, we got all of this. So let's say here we create another file, Jerry's band.txt. Jerry's band, okay. Let's put more people. Let's put Hunter. Now let's put Dan. And let's put Jerry. So these are the 3 people in Jerry's band. So now git add Jerry's band.txt. Git status. Yep, so this is saying it's in staged. So git commit Jerry's band.txt with a message that says add 3 members to Jerry's band in current. Okay, so now that's committed. Let's say we forgot how this is different from the 1970s branch trace. So we go git diff. Let's compare current, and then let's compare 1970s. So what it's doing is it's looking at every single file. This is the file from the current branch. This is the file from the 1970s branch, breaking down the differences based on the file. These minuses and pluses are a little bit confusing, right? Because it sounds like, oh, are we missing this? No, the minus literally just means the left thing we're comparing. The plus just means the right thing we're comparing. So this is the file, our current file on our current branch. This is the file from the 1970s. So we can see that in this, we have Hunter, Dan, and Jerry. In this one, the 1970s branch, we have Isaac, Sam, Ashish, Jamie, Tori, and Sam. Ooh, I added Sam twice. Oops. The good news is you can change those colors to make it better. And that's what I was experimenting today. And that's what made me want to make this video. So the first thing to know is colors that you can change is highly dependent on your scheme here. So if you look here, we got a bunch of colors. These are basically the only colors I can change the Git Diff color scheme to. Git config, we're messing with the configuration. Git config color.diff.old. We'll make this bright yellow. Remember how I noticed I accidentally added Sam twice? So let's add something else. Kobe. Okay, we'll add Kobe as a band member. So now that we've added Kobe, we gotta commit that. We can just do this. So we'll also do A, and then we'll do a message. Add Kobe the dog to branch. Here. And then you can look at Git status. You can see that we've committed it. Don't worry about this. I have this on a GitHub. So now if we look at our Git log, notice it shows your new commit here. Now let's compare. Let's say we wanted to compare between this and this. Hash here, and then this here. And look what happened. We changed it. You see, it's yellow. You see that? It's yellow. So isn't this way less intimidating? Again, all we're doing is comparing. We're not automatically assuming this thing is wrong, right? So we shouldn't have it in red to scare us. We're just comparing. Now, green, maybe we need to change the green, because after all, let me show you something else you can do. You can always change the order, right? So what if I decide I'm just going to compare the 2 files, but I'm going to put this one first, and then I'm going to put this one second. Now look at this. This is in yellow, and this is in green. It's almost implying this is better, right? That's the thing you associate with green. This is the good one. This is the one that we should go with. So maybe we need to change this too. So let's go back to the configuration. Git config. And then instead of changing the old, we're changing the new. New as in what's the second thing being compared. And then let's make it bright magenta. So now let's do it again here. So look at this. Does this look a little better? We're not passing judgment through the color schemes on which one's good or bad. We're literally just comparing. So let's say we switch it to this, right? Now the color's not messing with our psychology, making us think that one hash or one branch or one whatever we're comparing is better than the other. Because again, it's just different versions. Essentially what we're doing is we're going into the configuration folder and then we're changing certain values using a dot notation. Now, if that sounds like gibberish, it's okay. I'm going to go into that folder, that file, so you can see what we're doing. To access the folder, the really, really special folder, we have to list the hidden stuff. So you see that Git folder? We're going to change directory to this. So now in here, we're going to list the hidden folders again. And what we're trying to go to is that config folder. So we're going to use open config. We don't have to. We could always use VS Code here to open it. So if you look here, this is what we changed. So if you didn't want to use that dot notation, use your terminal, you can always change it here through this notepad that we open. So if we didn't like the bright yellow, maybe we could change it to something else. So let's change it to cyan. So we're going to do this, go back. So now let's compare the branches, 1970s to current. See that? We have cyan for the left thing that we are comparing, and then we have this magenta as the right thing we're comparing. Now the problem is we have this, which is also in cyan, so that's something we have to change to potentially. This is a location marker of the differences, so we don't want it just associated with this. So I did what some people recommend when you get stuck, which was I took a little break. And it's been a few hours, I came back. That little text that was right next to the @ it's called a hunk header. I couldn't figure out what it was. Eventually I came back, I found it. It's the hunk header. So all we need to do now is modify the color of the hunk header so it's not cyan. So let's go and look at this real quickly. VS Code by default does not show Git files. So I'll teach you in the future if you want how to show Git files. Basically, this was the same as the text pad we opened up before, the notepad we opened up before, but this just looks prettier in my mind because of the color coding. So all you have to do is frag. That means the hunk header. So what did we change finally? This little spot right here that we couldn't figure out before how to change. So now when you're looking at differences, this red, I think it's good because you might forget about the sections. This informs you where the change are. The red should tell you exactly where, if you want it to look location wise, where to find it. So this is the hunk header. So that's why I decided, you know what, probably this is a good idea. Let's make this part red, and then the two different versions, we don't put a judgment onto which is right, which is wrong, so they can be colors that aren't associated with fear. So this is finally what we ended up on. And I think this looks better than when we started. And just to compare, let's say we don't want any of this, right? So let's get rid of all this. We're getting rid of all this. Check what happens. Compare the difference here versus here. See the difference now? Clearly tells us a position, what the changes are, no judgment, versus here. What does this mean? Are we supposed to be worried about this? Is this correct? So there's a way to make this global, as in every time you have a Git repo, it automatically has these colors. And that's something we're going to explore next time. I wanted to end here because it's late and I've been editing for hours. What we explored is a perfect example of UI/UX design, UI in particular. How something is presented aesthetically will affect how the users use it. This is the perfect example. Changing the color scheme versus the default color scheme will change how someone interprets a specific command on Git. The default does not work. It confuses beginners and it even confuses veterans. The goal of this video is just to present some ideas because, as you can see, how it's presented is very important. Even look at this. The frame rate's different on this video than the ones I filmed when there was sun. So how does that change the perception of me right now? Think about that. I went really meta. All right, guys, this was learning to code and design, whatever I call my channel right now. Thank you so much. Talk to you guys soon.